الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله وحبيبه أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى يوم الدين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I'm a bit frazzled, just running from the airport right into here. So I might have to, I might go a little off sometimes, in terms of my organization. But first of all, I'd like to express my greatest appreciation for seeing this huge crowd. Hope I see the same numbers tomorrow. And I'm aware that there's a program coming on after this. And so in this short time, first of all, I have to apologize for being late. It was my fault. My plane was delayed in London for an hour. And when we got here, it was delayed in actually parking for us to get off the plane for about another 45 minutes. So it was kind of rough. But I haven't ever come to Montreal very often. This is my third trip to Montreal, actually. Growing up in Canada, I don't know why, I never really came here. But in the short time that we have, I'd like to give you an idea of what we want to discuss, or I rather the word discuss, although it's a unidirectional thing, but I still think it's a discussion, really. What I would like to discuss over the next few days. The first topic I would present tomorrow would be the metaphysical meaning of the Epic of Karbala in terms of linear time and cyclical time. When you say linear time, we mean linear time, things have a beginning and go to an end. And cyclical time meaning the cycle of time, insofar as things always come back and revisit us. For example, the story of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is not just one event that occurred in history, but it is an archetypal event where we see combatants or actors on that historical stage who represent things beyond themselves, who represent personality types, who represent political types of orientations and responses and so forth. And also, not only is this program taking place at that time, but it is also taking place in every time, in every place. And not just in every place also, but also in the place in our hearts, also in our souls. So I'm not going to talk about Shimr as a figure somewhere in history, and Imam Hussein alayhi salam as the Imam on that particular stage. I want to talk about us being Shimr, us being Hussein, us being Abbas, us being Zainab. And we have all these forces inside of us that compete with each other. So most of us know that sometimes, in some situations, we behave like Ahl Kufa. Whenever we are threatened in terms of our social security, our position in the job or whatnot, we don't stand up for our rights because we are more afraid of the world than of God. We are Ahl Kufa. When we take up the challenge to confront our demons, to confront our enemies and so on, we are Imam Hussein and we are the followers of Imam Hussein. So I talk a lot. I think when I'm talking, I would like you all to keep this in mind. I'd also want to, in those discussions, We will be discussing things like, for example, youth empowerment. You know, how do you not just relate and get along with the society in which you live, the wider society in which you live, but how you take charge, how you determine the game. You know, it's not about just being accepted. It's about being the center. And because we are imam, right? We are imam, we are people of leadership, so we should take leadership. And in that particular frame of reference, we want to talk about women, especially young women, young girls, you know, and what is their special role to play in society. You know, what is female spirituality, for example? You know, and things like that. Because again, we live in an environment where one of the areas where Islam is attacked is in its traditional understanding or insistence on women, or traditional understanding on women. You know, we live in a society right now, in a world environment right now that is rapidly trying to eliminate differences between men and women. You know, so we have this idea of gender fluidity and so forth and so on. I think this is something that we need to also address. Now, a member is not necessarily the best place to take on some of these questions. And I think somewhere along the line, we'll be having a question and answer period where we could discuss some of these things in depth. So see, these are some of the general areas that I would like to go into. Now, just to give an example about Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, I was asked to talk a little bit about Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam tonight. And you know, one of the things that I usually tell people that Hazrat Abbas is an excellent example for our sisters. It's an excellent example for our sisters. You know, I think we tend to sort of unnecessarily stereotype people in terms of gender. You know, we tend to think that Hazrat Zainab Salam Alaiha is an example for women, and as Hazrat Abbas and Hazrat Ali Akbar and all the others are all examples for men. No, these are all spiritual types. They're spiritual types, and they're spiritual types that are beyond gender. Okay, they may be masculine and feminine, you know, spiritual types, but that's very different from gender, because masculine is something beyond male. You know, yes, males are masculine, but masculinity is not something that is only predicated upon males. You know, for example, I used to fear my mother more than my dad. You know, okay? My mother was more masculine with me when she had to take care of business, you see. Not my dad. My dad was just super cool and it didn't bother him. You see? So this stereotype is wait till your father comes home. You know, my dad used to tell me wait till your mother comes home. You know, but yeah, she was, you know, and this is a masculine aspect. It isn't that she grew up beard and she was talking with a deep voice or nothing like that. It's just a certain type of a role. If you look at, for example, some of the greatest athletes in the world, especially in very physical games, like, for example, soccer or boxing and so forth, again, you would see the play of masculinity and femininity. When you compare Mike Tyson to a Muhammad Ali is more feminine than Mike Tyson, okay? In the sense that Muhammad Ali, for example, would be somebody who would describe his boxing moves as dancing, for example. And he'd refer to himself as being pretty. He wouldn't say handsome, he said pretty. Because pretty is the extreme of handsome, for example. You see that? You see what I'm saying? You know, when you look at, for example, some of the great football players like Ronaldo and Thierry Henry and so forth and so on, some people describe them as playing football like a ballerina. This is a feminine type of a quality, with grace, with finesse, and so forth. Okay? So we go beyond that. Now, why do I say Hazrat Abbas is a better example for our sisters in this time than maybe even our brothers? Not that he's not an example for our brothers, of course he is. But why do I think he's a better example for our sisters? It is because he has a particular characteristic. Okay? He holds the liwa, he holds the standard, he holds the flag. Now, the tradition in military types of confrontations, even today, not as much, but in the past it was much more so. The tradition in military confrontations in those times especially, you always had a flag bearer. You always had a flag bearer. And the flag bearer was the person who was the best soldier, the strongest person, the most brave, the most valiant soldier you had on the battlefield. Why? Because that flag, while flying in the middle of a battle, told the people who were fighting behind that flag that the war was still being won, or we were not losing. When that flag fell, the morale of the soldiers would also fall. So you would find that the enemy would be focused on taking out the flag bearer. The defending army would be focused on protecting the flag bearer. And that whenever the flag bearer fell, somebody else would come and pick up the flag. Now, we ask ourselves a question: what is the flag of Islam today in Montreal, or in Toronto, or in New York City, or in London? Who is the flag bearer today? Where is the heat of the battle taking place? Where is the heat of that battle? Who is in the center of that battle? When you come to a city like London or New York, and you say there's a lot of Muslims here, what do we mean by a lot of Muslims here? Like, you brothers, I tell you, if I'm walking the street and I'm not wearing this, nobody take me as a Muslim. You know, unless they see this mark on my head, and well, just Muslims know that, right? They don't know. But what is the flag of Islam? What gets the enemies of Islam so annoyed that they have to try to take you out? Not necessarily physically, that happens too, with physical assault and so on, right? But verbally, you know, in the class, for example, when a teacher is teaching, and there is this flag bearer in the class, and they see the flag, and that teacher starts to teach in a certain type of a indirect, oblique way to get that flag bearer to lose their confidence and to doubt themselves. What is the flag bearer of 2019? The flag bearer of 2019 is the hijab, the hijabi woman. That's the flag bearer, the hijabi woman. Okay? Because wherever us brothers go, as long as we're not wearing turbans, and as long as we're not wearing dashes, you know, you got a beard, you could pass as a hippie in the 21st century. Okay? The flag bearer of the day is the hijabi wearing sister. Now, before you went into battle, who is the person who's training the most? Who's the person who knows how to sword fight the best? Who's the person who could give the greatest Raja's war poetry? Who is the person who will not run from the battlefield that's the person you're training. That's the best person. It says that Hazrat Abbas, when they saw the flag was all, the staff was all cut up with swords, except the places where his hand was holding. And remember Hazrat Abbas, when his two hands were cut off, how it was so important for him to keep that flag going. He held the flag between the neck of the horse and his body. That's how important that flag was. Now, how do we treat our sisters going out in that Islamophobic, hostile environment? Do we treat them like this? Do we train them to defend themselves? And when I say train them to defend themselves, I do not just mean train them to defend themselves verbally, but also to train themselves so that if one person puts his hand on your hijab, he's going to lose his fingers. And so the next time you want to mess with another Muslim sister, he'll think about the fingers he lost and say, I'm going to behave myself. I tell you, I'm talking from experience, okay? I mean, we grew up in this society in a very racist environment. I mean, when I moved to Canada, you know, we had a group here called the Western Guard. They were something like the Ku Klux Klan, the Western Guard. You know, every day in the paper in the 1970s, you would read about some Pakistani getting beat up, some black person getting beat up, some black woman, or some Italian or Chinese or somebody getting beat up, because in those days, you know, Canada has had a racist immigration policy, not just against brown peoples, okay, of different shades of brown, but also they had a racist policy against Southern Europeans. So it was very difficult for Spanish people to emigrate to Canada. Very difficult for Italians to emigrate to Canada. Yes, okay, racism is like that. And so in that time, we had some pretty roughneck type of dudes. You know, somebody who, if you call them some bad word, they would knock your lights out. After a while, people started to, because that's what racists do, right? They generalize. They generalize. They stereotype, right? So one person takes them out, knocks them out, okay? They start thinking they all are like this and they start respecting you. To what extent do we train our daughters how to intellectually defend themselves, how to physically defend themselves and not be afraid? Okay. Do we do this? Or do we just say to them, oh my daughter, you have now become baligh, and you know, we're gonna have a nice little a baligh party for you, and from tomorrow you'll be wearing a hijab. Isn't that nice? Right? And you're going out to war. No wonder. I don't criticize young girls for becoming hypocritical. Okay, because they are alone out there. They are alone out there. Right? They have no backing. Okay, no backing at all. And I don't just mean no backing from the point of view of their parents making them or getting them prepared to go out in that outside world and defend Islam and defend themselves. Not just that, but also you find they don't get any backing from the brothers. From the brothers outside there. When Islam was spreading in the United States in the 60s and the 70s and so forth, you had brothers looking out for sisters, okay? You had brothers looking out for sisters. They don't know the sisters, you know. There's just one sister wearing hijab, right? I got your back. They don't know you got their back. You got their back. And we had experiences with this. Okay? Nobody can touch our sisters because she got a lot of brothers out there looking out for her. About a year or two ago, I was looking at an experiment. It was on the net somewhere. I was looking at an experiment about Muslim reactions to Islamophobia on the part of the police in England. And they had this Muslim woman who was wearing a burkini, and they were on the beach, Brighton, or one of those beaches in the southern coast of the UK. And you had this person who was a fake cop, and he was actually harassing this sister. Of course, this sister was also part of the whole experiment as well. Harassing the sister in front of a whole lot of people on the beach, right? That she should get rid of this burkini. Okay, you can't go into the water with this burkini. You know, the only people who came up to this sister's rescue were Christian Jamaicans. Christian Jamaicans. Because they are familiar with police harassment. Not one Muslim. It is only after those Christian Jamaicans stood up for this woman, okay, who looked Middle Eastern, all right, and challenged the cop, then you started to realize how many Muslims were on that beach, because they became empowered to get up and do something. But the people who started to do something, okay, were not Muslims. So we have two problems here with our sisters. On one level, we encourage them to go out there with hijab, but we do not prepare them for it. And on another level, they need community support and protection from potential threats out there, and that protection has been diminished. So we have to prepare our children. We have to prepare our daughters. We have to prepare our daughters because they are the ones on the front line of this struggle. Okay? And when that teacher is teaching them, he has a special message for that girl, that single girl in hijab in that class. He's going to throw out a particular line, he will make a particular comment to erode that Islam that he thinks that she has. It is very important for parents, when your kid comes home, to debrief them. What did you learn in school today? What did they say about this? What did they say about that? What did they say about religion? Okay? What kind of experiences are you having? And you're doing this to empower them. You're doing this to give them a critical point of view. You know, when I was in Iran, for example, my 10-year-old daughter came home one day and said to me, "Daddy, they wanted me to act in a play." I said, "Well, that's a great idea. In school, they wanted to act in a play." She said, "No," but I told them, "No, I don't want to act in the play." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because they wanted me to play Shaitan." Yeah, because she's dark. You ever heard about white Shaitan? So dark skin and brown eyes. Okay, she said, "No, I don't want to play no Shaitan." Why? Because she's been debriefed. I've had a program with her. You know, and you guys know, right? You know, if you're going to compare these white guys in this country to the Muslims in the East, I'm telling you, it's trouble, man. Okay, you know it, right? But she was debriefed. And I said to her, "So who they got to play Shaitan?" She said, "They got a Bangladeshi girl." All right? You think this isn't happening here? It mightn't be so blatant because these guys over there, they're not sophisticated. Over here, they're very sophisticated with their racism. Okay? You have to be able to talk to your daughters. You have to empower them. Okay? For those of us here who don't know English, learn it. It might take a while if you're too old, but you will learn it because you have to interface with the school system. You have to be able to talk with to your kids about what they're learning in English. You have to be able to do this. You have to be able to point them to some place. If you can't help them, you have to be able to point them to some place where they can be helped. But you cannot afford to have a communication problem with the school. You can't do this. Because you are endangering your daughter, especially, and your son. You're endangering them. And then Islam might be lost. And then you start to think, I didn't do anything. Yes, you did. You did something by not doing something. And when you have people who are empowered like this, then you can change the society. You can change your society. You don't have to be a majority to change society. You can change society as a minority, but you have to stand up for your rights. You have to be brave. You have to be able to wear your Islam with pride. And you know what? People in this environment, they respect you when you're proud about your Islam. Okay, I'm getting a signal here that it's almost threatening. So inshallah, hopefully that tomorrow we will start formally, and inshallah I'm looking forward to discussing these things with you, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أخوان أخوات مازدا 6 M71 PXG برغندي خلي حركة صاحب رحمة الله عليكم.
صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. مرة ثانية مازدا برغندي مازدا 6 برغندي M71 PXG خلي حركة رحمة الله عليكم. نساعد على شخص من خارج المسجد يسوي دبل ماركينج رحمه الله عليكم.